Tonight, the man that they call the doctor to the pros talks about the pros and cons of getting big, real big. I'm Mike Schneider, and this is Night Talk. Welcome to Night Talk, and we welcome Dr. Carlton Kolker to the program. You might know him as a competitive bodybuilder or from his co-starring role on the TV program Shaq's Big Challenge, also author of Extreme Muscle Enhancement. And it is good of you to join us today because we've had so much in the news. First of all, we always like to have somebody like you come around to help us get just a sense of optimism that we can, in fact, get ourselves back into very good shape. But there's been so much controversy as of late with a number of cases of people with the steroid issue, both in baseball and in professional wrestling and what have you. And it's a subject that doctors such as yourself deal with endlessly when it comes to especially young men who suddenly want to do something to get themselves either looking better or being more competitive on the playing fields, as it were.
Mike, even a golfer came forward recently and said that there was so much prevalence of drug abuse in golfing. So you can imagine that this is a very, very pervasive problem in professional sports.
Did it surprise you that a golfer would come forward?
It surprised me that a golfer would come forward, but it didn't shock me beyond belief because, look, it's very prevalent. We see it all over the place with all athletes in all different disciplines.
Why? I mean, is it a given that if you take steroids, generically speaking, steroids, that you're going to be better at your sport?
It is almost a foregone conclusion that steroids, they really do make you perform better. If you're going to abuse them, they work, and that's why they use them. Now, the book Extreme Muscle Enhancement talks about these things. It talks about the truth. Because the cradle of all performance-enhancing drug abuse is bodybuilding, is professional bodybuilding. This is where it all comes from. But also, the cradle of training, proper diet also comes from our knowledge about bodybuilding. So that's where the essence of all the truth comes from. So what I wanted to do is come forward with a book, Extreme Muscle Enhancement, that talks about the dietary principles, the training principles, and the drugs, and what they do, how they do those drugs, and what they abuse, and the way in which they do that.
Talk to me about the difference between the drugs per se and the supplements, and the gray area that seem to exist with some of them.
Yeah, some of them are pro-hormones, so there's sort of they fall into that gray area where are they really a steroid, an anabolic steroid, or are they really a natural dietary supplement? Now, a steroid just per se just refers to 3 6-carbon rings and a 5-carbon ring sort of put together. So the simplest of steroids is like butter. Cholesterol is a steroid. Vitamin D is a steroid. Okay, but cortisone is also a steroid. Testosterone is also a steroid. Estrogen, the female sex hormone, also a steroid. So you see that there are these natural substances that fall into that gray area. Right. Now, some of them are more designer. They put a little side chain on it. They trick around with the molecule a little bit, and you've got a new animal somewhere, something in between a dietary supplement and a drug. And this is where the professional athlete can also get into trouble because whether it helps them or not, the point is it could test them positive for anabolic steroids.
Well, that's how we've seen that, especially with the professional, the Tour de France, and some of those athletes, and in the Olympics, where we've had people who are asthmatics suddenly find themselves disqualified, losing medals.
Yeah, well, this gets into an area that I think we all need to take a more careful look at, and that is use versus abuse. If somebody is asthmatic and they take Preventil to help them normalize, that's a medical use. It's not really an abuse, and they should be cut a little slack there, as opposed to someone who's trying to optimize the performance.
We were talking before we went on the air. My wife is a physician, as a pediatrician, deals with many asthmatic children, and when the parents hear that what their child is going to be taking as an inhaler is essentially a steroid, someone says, I don't want my child on steroids. So there is a big difference.
Yes, there's a difference between, now if you're talking about steroids per se, there are anabolic steroids which build up muscle, and there are catabolic steroids like cortisone and these types of this classification. And we see that, we use that in the asthmatics, we use that when we're trying to reduce inflammation using a steroid, a catabolic steroid.
Right. A lot of people,
there's a
if you
big
have a rash
difference
or
between
something,
the two.
people put steroid cream on. some of those things as well.
So the word steroid is really, when we refer to performance-enhancing drugs, we're referring to the anabolic steroids and not the steroids per se. Otherwise, we'd have to include, the butter that you had this morning.
Exactly.
And hopefully not too much.
No, not at all. And there are some people walking around who are not, shall we say, in perfect shape, who would say, well, I'm on steroids.
Yeah, exactly.
Eating butter. When you look back, and I was going through some of the pictures here of some of the legendary bodybuilders that existed, and where did the steroid issue really become noticeably obvious? When did it really pop up?
Well, the steroids have been around for, for practically generations. Some 50 years ago, even Governor Schwarzenegger talks about how there was a time when, we had physicians prescribing anabolic steroids to people that were muscle building and things like that, telling them this is going to be good for your joints, it's going to be actually good for them, that they actually needed it, that it was actually helpful. So a lot of people, and Governor Schwarzenegger talks about it very, very openly, that went ahead and thought they were using when in fact they were really abusing, but we didn't know that till after the fact. Yeah. Now we have a lot more retrospective knowledge. We know that there's a difference between use and abuse. With anabolic steroids, there are uses to these things. That's why they're drugs. They're actually given to people, for example, men with testicular hypogonadism. They don't produce enough testosterone. Those are individuals that might have a medical indication for testosterone. But if you're going to take testosterone just to hit that ball out of the ballpark or just to crash through the line a little bit harder, now that's abuse.
Yeah, and it comes with a price tag of some potentially serious later effects, and some not so later side effects as well.
The abuse of performance-enhancing drugs, and that's what I talk about in the book, it has a cost. And that cost I describe in detail in Extreme Muscle Enhancement. I talk about the cost of using anabolic steroids, of using growth hormone, but I mean abusing, really. And the cost is in the short term, as you point out, and also in the long term. If you take something like testosterone, an anabolic steroid, the very common anabolic steroid testosterone, you can get short-term side effects like a short fuse or even development of female breast tissue, the gynecomastia, which then needs to be operated on and removed. That's a little unsettling, not life-threatening, but unsettling because the aesthetics are a little weird, and you say, well, geez, I was going after bigger pecs, not breasts,
Absolutely. Plus acne and things such as that as well.
Exactly.
But you can go into a store right now and buy, once again, a precursor, DHEA, which can convert, I guess, as well, can it not?
DHEA, or dihydroepiandrosterone, can convert to another pro-hormone, androstenedione, which can then convert to testosterone. But just to touch on some of the longer-term side effects, liver cancer.
You know what? Let's pick it up on that serious note. We have to take a break. Back in a moment, continuing our conversation with Carlin Kolker. Don't go away. Back once again. Dr. Carlin Kolker is our guest. Extreme Muscle Enhancement is his latest book right now. Also, television with Shaq. How did that come to pass? You work with Shaq.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shaquille O'Neal, of course, yes.
I work with a little guy named Shaquille O'Neal, almost 7'2", 340 pounds.
How did that relationship come to? I know there are doctor-patient trainer relationship, confidentiality agreements that exist.
Confidentiality.
But talk to me the extent you can about how you came to work with Shaq.
His issue was really injury-related early on because, there's the NBA rules, and sorry, NBA officials, there are the Shaq rules. And Shaq's gotten beaten up a lot over the years, especially early on in his career when they simply did not know how to manage him on the court, so they would double and triple team him, and he took a lot of injuries. So he contacted me, and the rest is history. We never stopped working with each other, and we've had some great successes in the last World Championship. This was a big success because it meant going from LA to Miami and starting over again, and we got our World Championship. So real proud of him.
Yep. As I can imagine you would be. How did you find yourself in this position, though? I mean, I know a lot of physicians. Obviously, with my wife being one. I've kind of grown up in an environment filled with doctors. I don't see too many doctors who have your physique and who have also your career as well. How did this come to be?
Look, I apply some of the same principles in the book. I used to be a bodybuilder, competitive bodybuilder. I won the East Coast in 1984.
It's not that long ago in my book. It's okay.
Hurts to say that, and so I work with a lot of the bodybuilders, so I'm very well aware of the training methods, the diet methods, and also the drugs that they use. This is all part of the landscape, and it's all part of the landscape of professional sports as well.
In